How to grow an orange tree from seed. I've always had the dream of growing an orange tree in my backyard. It all started a couple of years back when I was eating this juicy, sweet Valencia orange and decided to try planting the seeds. Admittedly, the first experiment was a bit of a bust. I didn't realize you're supposed to prep the seeds first. But my luck changed last year. After watching some online tutorials and soaking a few seeds, I successfully sprouted a tiny orange seedling. It felt like a huge accomplishment, and now it's well over a foot tall and thriving in a big pot on my balcony. I can just imagine how amazing it will be when the first little oranges finally start to form. How to prune an orange tree. Honestly, I find pruning my orange tree to be quite intimidating. There's a lot of info out there on the right way, but I'm still figuring it out. That being said, I'm getting more comfortable with each season. My first few attempts were super cautious. I mainly snipped off dead bits and a few awkwardly angled branches. Last spring, I got a bit bolder and tried to open up the center for light and air circulation. I'm hoping this results in a fuller, healthier tree in the long run, but I always get a little nervous I've done too much. The good thing is orange trees are pretty resilient, so even if I make a few mistakes, my tree seems to forgive me. Where do orange trees come from? I always thought oranges were originally from somewhere warm and tropical like Florida or California. But recently I learned something surprising. Turns out, oranges actually come from Southeast Asia, areas like China and India. It makes sense when you think about how many different Asian dishes use them for flavor. I guess this also explains why my parents always had a few orange trees in the backyard when I was growing up. I'm fascinated by how this fruit became a global favorite, traveling across the world to land on my breakfast plate. Do orange trees have thorns? Absolutely. I learned this the hard way the first time I reached into my orange tree to harvest a couple of fruits. Ouch! Those thorns are pretty sharp, though not all varieties of orange trees have them. Mine seems to have especially vicious ones, and they're always worst on the newer branches. Now I wear thick gardening gloves and long sleeves whenever I'm working with the tree. It's a small price to pay for such sweet, juicy, homegrown oranges, but I definitely have a newfound respect for those thorns. When do orange trees bloom? My orange tree always seems to know spring is coming before I do, right around late February or March. My balcony fills up with the sweetest, most intoxicating fragrance, like a gentle citrusy breeze. That's when I know the blooms are coming. A few days later, the branches will be covered in delicate white flowers. It's easily my favorite time of year. The blossoms are so beautiful, and the promise of fresh oranges later in the season is beyond exciting. Do oranges ripen off the tree? Sadly, the best thing about oranges is also a bit of a bummer. They don't ripen once you pick them. I've learned this lesson the hard way a few times. You think a slightly greenish orange might get sweeter on your countertop, but nope. It usually just gets dry and loses its bright, juicy quality. That's why I only harvest oranges when they're fully colored. I even give them a little taste test right off the tree. I'd rather wait a few extra weeks or even months to get the sweetest, most delicious fruit possible. How long do orange trees live? I wish my orange tree could live as long as I do. Sadly, I know they have a limited lifespan, maybe 50 or 60 years on average. Mine is still pretty young, but I often think about how old it'll be when I'm really old. It makes me want to savor every single orange because I know there's a limit to how many seasons we'll have together. In a weird way, I guess it reminds me to appreciate all the good things in life, even if they don't last forever. How big do orange trees get? This seems to depend a lot on the type of orange tree and whether it's been pruned. I have a Valencia orange in my backyard, and that thing is getting massive. I swear it grows another foot every year. I try to keep it in check, but the tree seems pretty determined to reach for the sky. I guess it's happy here. On the other hand, my friend has a dwarf orange tree on her patio, and it's much smaller, just a few feet tall, perfect since her space is limited. It's a good reminder there are orange trees out there for all kinds of spaces. How often to water orange trees? Figuring out how often to water my orange tree has been a process of trial and error. It depends a lot on the weather and the time of year. During the hot summer months, I check the soil every day or two. If it feels dry an inch or so down, it's definitely time for a deep soak. In the cooler seasons, I can ease up a bit, maybe watering once a week or even less if we're getting rain. The biggest mistake I've made is overwatering. Orange trees hate soggy roots, so it's better to err on the side of underwatering a bit, especially during the cooler months. Are orange trees self-pollinating? For the most part, yes. Most orange trees, like mine, have both male and female reproductive parts in their flowers. This means they can mostly take care of their own pollination, especially if there's a little breeze or some insect activity happening. Still, I've heard that hand-pollinating can lead to even bigger, better harvests. I haven't tried it myself, but I might give it a go next blooming season just to see if it makes a difference. Either way, it's incredibly convenient that I don't have to plant multiple orange trees to get fruit. Can orange trees survive winter? This definitely depends on where you live and what kind of orange tree you have. Here, winters are generally pretty mild, so my Valencia orange does just fine with minimal protection. But if you live somewhere with harsh, snowy winters, you'd likely need a special cold-hardy variety, or even bring the tree indoors. I always find it amazing how adaptable orange trees can be across different climates. It highlights how this delicious fruit traveled the world to end up in our kitchens. How to graft orange tree. While I have a little experience with basic gardening, I've never personally tried grafting an orange tree. It seems pretty complex, definitely not something I'd take on as a beginner. I've seen videos where people make it look easy, but I imagine it takes a lot of practice to really nail the technique. Plus, there are different types of grafting methods. If I were serious about giving it a shot, I'd probably start with lots of research and watch some detailed tutorials, maybe even connecting with local experienced gardeners if possible. It would be a super cool skill to learn, though.